Good morning to everyone out there listening or watching via social media. Welcome to another edition of Policing with You. I'm your host for this morning, Inspector Marvin Thompson. And we're going to be touching, maybe it's a brief discussion, I'm just going to share some information on two pieces of legislation that have been a point of discussion, much discussion over the years, and even in recent times. And I dare say, when the topic comes up, it's still a point of much discussion, and that has to do with smoking and cannabis, and the combination of smoking cannabis, particularly in public places. Now, we know that prior to 2019, cannabis possession was a criminal offense in general. After 2019, the first piece of legislation was passed to amend the Drug Act to decriminalize certain quantities of cannabis. So the amount went from 15 grams up to 56 grams, which under certain circumstances you're allowed to have in your possession without having, if detained, well, you cannot be detained, or should not be detained for the possession of that quantity. The law was further addressed in 2023, and some changes were made. If I can remember correctly, the penalties, few of the penalties were reduced. I think there were penalties for smoking in the initial amendment as much as 1,000. I think more or less now they have leveled the penalties to, I think, where the max is 500. It made the possession of the 56 grams not criminal, while an offense, depending on the circumstance, instead of you being arrested, the law says that you would be issued a fixed penalty. More or less, you get ticketed. But there was still some confusion in terms of the overall legislation, how much we know about the trees for private you could cultivate, and how much in the possession, and that has still been a point of discussion. So the ministry came up with the cannabis clarity thing, and I just take a few minutes and read. So we know that it said the new cannabis regime legalizes religious and freedom of conscience, cultivation, possession, and use of cannabis. The Constitution protects freedom of conscience, including religious freedom, and the High Court recognizes Rastafari as a protected religion. Rastafari. So Rastafari groups can now cultivate and use cannabis for sacramental purposes at their registered places of assembly. The law also allows licensed individual. The law also allows licensed, put up emphasis on the licensed individuals to possess limited amount of cannabis, cultivate up to 5 plants and smoke cannabis in designated public areas. Similarly, the possession and the cultivation and smoking outside of designated areas without a license are now ticketable offenses, to mention. So there are responsibilities for all individuals, licensed or otherwise, including restrictions on driving under the influence and selling without a license. Minors are prohibited from cultivating and using the cannabis, and that should go without saying. Designated smoking areas are regulated by the Chief Medical Officer, and a $500 ticket can be issued for smoking outside of these designated areas. in terms of the religious freedom, it said you can cultivate. It's now legal for a person who holds a license issued under the Freedom of Conscience Cannabis Act to cultivate up to 5 plants in a secure area within their private premises. In a secure area within your private premises. So, if I am understanding this, there shouldn't be some parts on the front of your veranda for all to see. You can possess up to, and back up, these are persons who have a license issued under the Cannabis Act to cultivate up to 5 plants in a secure area, possess the 56 grams in certain public places. Licensed persons possess the 56 grams in a public place, or the cannabis resin. Smoke the cannabis in a designated area, a place designated for smoking. So you might be somewhere in the place. We have seen, like in music festival, you see the space that have designated. So that would be an example of what they're talking about in terms of the smoking in designated area. So what was interesting, and when I was reading through it, reminded myself in terms of the license, and it's the license which gives permission for the possession of the 56 grams in a public place. So it's not that a free for all, that since the law passed, anybody can just get up and have it, and that there's nothing wrong with that. To have that privilege, it's not saying that you can't, but to be afforded to do that without consequence, you must obtain a license. And public place, and public place generally is when we in training school, public place is one of the largest definitions, because it covers practically everything. And the public place under this act is a little different than the one under what we call small charges. That speaks to the bad one, and we used to the bad one, public place. This mentions hospitals and churches and health centers, religious establishments, government businesses and government vehicles, statutory places like ZIZ, the premises, school or educational areas. So those you cannot should not be smoking cannabis in those places. Period. And smoking, they have a definition for smoking. That's the way the law works. They tell you what they mean. And smoke means to inhale. No. So to inhale, to exhale. So if you inhale, you smoke. If you exhale, you smoke. If you burn, even if you just light it up. You inhale or exhale it. You just light it, you burn. So, you smoke. It's a combust, you light it, and it's just there in the lighting. So, you may not be smoking it, but it's there even like you're burning like an incense. You vaporize, and they got these devices now to vape and do all kind of story. So, those, and you say, vaporize any lighted or heated device or pipe. So even if you're using your chalice or something else, you still for sure considered to be smoking. Or any other lighted or heated cannabis or cannabis resin intended for inhalation, whether you're using a natural or synthetic, or in any other form, and you're using some electronic device or not, as long as it creates an aerosol or vapor in any manner or any form, and the use is an oral device for the purpose of trying to get around the definition for smoking, you're still considered to have been smoking, and that is an offense. So you have those places and you have that definition in terms of smoking. And this is under the Freedom of Conscience Cannabis Act. Section 3 of the Act talks to the application for license, and it says an adult. So you have to be an adult. Generally in our laws mean at least 18. An adult may apply to the ministry for a license permitting, and in terms of what the cannabis clarification thing was saying, this is what it talks about. An adult may apply to the ministry for a license permitting the possession of the 56 grams or less, or 15 grams or less of the cannabis resin. Resin in permitting in a public place. So you may apply for a license to have on your possession the 56 grams that we talk about a lot. You may apply for a license for smoking cannabis in a designated area, in public place, designated public areas for smoking. You may apply for a license. You may apply for a license for the cultivation of 5 or less cannabis plants in a secure area within your private premises, so as to prevent minors or persons vulnerable to substance abuse from accessing such plants or any other unauthorized access to such plant. Let me read the part again. You may apply for a license to cultivate your 5 or less cannabis plants in a secure area within your private premises, but they must be in a secure area that prevents children and persons, let's say druggie, yeah, whoever there might be, persons vulnerable to substance abuse from accessing them. So it's almost like you have your money and you lock it away in your vault because you don't want persons who shouldn't take it up to take it up. You need a similar mentality. Not that you can't do it, but it must be secure so that your children just can't go in, go experiment. Persons who might have particular challenges in terms of substance abuse should know that you have your plants there and think it's easy pickings. You go and get it. You need to secure it to prevent that.
Yes, sir.
But to do that in the first place, you were supposed to have a license to plant. So the law did not say from the passing of the law right away that whoever in St. Kitts and Nevis wants to plant cannabis, everybody is allowed 5 plants automatically. You have an opportunity to plant 5 plants. But to be able to do that, you must apply for a license. Apply, and I would say, go further and say, be afforded a license if you don't have a license. So I can't send in the application and then go home and plant because I said I applied. When you get the permission, if the permission says you can plant the 5, then you plant the 5 based on the license, based on the legislation. I'm just reading the legislation. May make it up.
Yeah, I hear you. I have a couple of questions for you. Well, what are we going to do right now, though? We're going to take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and then when we return, we'll open the line, 662-8674, for those of you who would like to get in on the conversation and share your concerns and also ask your questions. We will be back right after these messages.
No problem.
You ready? Let's go! St. St. Kitts and Nevis, get ready. The second edition of the Jesus in the City Parade and Festival is coming to Warner Park, Bastille on Saturday, May 17th, 2025. Join thousands of believers from across the Federation and the Caribbean as we unite in a powerful celebration of love for God and love for people through music, the arts, and the culture. The festivities kick off at 11 a.m. with the parade leaving Warner Park at 12 noon and moving along city streets, returning to the park for a grand concert celebration. Be a part of this unforgettable experience. Enter a float or group or become a sponsor. Visit JesusInTheCity.com to get involved.
But Jeff, you leaving already, boss? You sure you could drive after them drinks?
Yeah, I could handle it, Ain't too far from here. I'm gonna take me time.
Oh my God, Jeff, you're gone. I told you not to drink and drive.
The problem with drinking and driving is the morning after. Drink responsibly.
This message was brought to you by the St. Kitts Nevis National Council on Drug Abuse Prevention in collaboration with SKNIS.
Okay, welcome back to Police with you. And this morning we have been touching a little bit on the Freedom of Conscience Cannabis Act and a little also with the Smoking Designated Areas Act.
Now, my first question to you, sir, where do you apply?
I think it's the Ministry of Health that issues. The Minister of Health. So it's the Ministry of Health. The Minister of Health who has responsibility as it pertains to the official applications. So,
Is there a fee?
Yes. I think the license was $100.
And that's straight across the board, no matter your business, establishment, the size.
I'm going to point. I read it just this morning.
And while Mr. Thompson is looking for that information, let me just remind you, the phone line is open, 662-8674, for you to get in with your questions or concerns as it relates to the topic at hand this morning. Freedom of conscience and smoking in public places.
Yes.
All right. So
any person, partnership, director, company, may apply to the chief medical officer for a license declaring a designated smoking area in any public business schedule. The fee payable for the application in respect to all business is $200.
Okay.
A fee payable for application with respect to an event or series is $100.
Okay. So for a specific event is $100, and for a license for the year is $200. Okay.
And license expire on the 31st of December.
Okay. So if my interpretation of what you shared this morning is correct, you're saying it is legal, but it's not a free for all.
Yes. There's a process. So.
Right. So in other words, yes, it's legal. So
it's like
I St. Clair Library.
Yes.
Even though it's legal,
yes,
don't have the right to get up this morning and do as I please because it's legal. I have to go and seek permission.
Yes. It's like driving. You may know how to, but if you don't have a license to, you're still breaking the law. You might be the best driver in St. Kitts, but if you don't have a valid license to drive, you're still breaking the law.
Okay.
Even though you're driving better, you can drive better than the persons who do have a license. The permission to drive is what is important there.
That's based on the law of the land.
The law of the land.
Okay, I got you. 662-8674. I'll let you continue, Mr. Thompson.
Okay, so in terms of for the trees, a license issued pursuant to the Act.
Can you
And
stick a pin there and,
Okay.
and remember your thought? Good morning, you live.
Mr. Libert,
Good morning.
how are you today, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for asking.
And Inspector Thompson,
Yeah, good
how
morning.
are you?
I am doing well, thank you.
Inspector Thompson,
Yes, sir.
you have a host that is right now presently sitting in the studio in your company that is very observant. I admire him for his knowledge and observation.
Yes, sir.
You heard what he asked you this morning, just a while ago? And your response was clear and understood?
Yes, sir.
Evidently, it's taking place still. Now, who is policing this law that Leo and Sinclair may be the best farmer and knows about plants but don't have the right to go and plant cannabis even on his property that he owns? Who police that?
Well, the responsibility falls within the Ministry of Health, the police, and national security, health. Because there are a
like
number
that.
of officers, number of
I like
areas
that.
that covers that.
You know why I say it like that? Because what is taking place today have been taken long before they gave the right and authority for people to plant cannabis, set amount of trees on their property. What is even taking place today? People are still find smoking cannabis on their balcony and the gallery that affects people in the neighborhood.
That is true.
And I'm wondering, all these things that have been when law, which is of this country, I believe a lot of these things that are law, police officers who are supposed to serve and protect, ignoring a lot of these things because I'm certain, not just what I'm talking about, there are other things if they can do, if it's so evident before their face. They're ignoring these things too. But I really want to be that the police officers should become more professional, concerned, and pay attention to what they have been trained and taught to do and expected to go out and do to protect and serve. Inspector,
Yes, sir.
I don't want to be hard on anybody, but of course, I'm speaking about things that I do know, which is the truth. That's not foreign to me. And I like the idea of the young man that I respect very much. He knows what he's saying when he says the things he says because he listens, and I admire him for that. But I'm telling you, a lot of what's taking place has been taking place long before that law has been passed. And it's good to give people the right, the authority, and opportunity to apply for the license. Obviously, you shouldn't be able to go on road and drive if you don't have a license. That gives you the right to do so. You shouldn't be able to plant cannabis on your property if you don't have a license. But, Inspector, a lot of things have been said, and there are not things that counteract them that put things in place according to law. But I thank you for listening and have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Always welcome the contribution.
All right, we have another call. You're welcome to call back, and of course, you know the number 662-8674. Let's wait a bit. Here we go.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome to Policing with you. Hello, good morning. Go ahead.
Hi. All right. So I feel like you guys have been doing a lot in terms of having so much rules and regulation. If you guys gonna legalize marijuana, how all of a sudden now is a lot of go through here to go through there, pay for license just to plant 5 trees? That doesn't make any sense. It's either it's legalized or it's not legalized. That is like the government is trying to get a little profit off of what people is going to be bringing in the income. Some people probably planting for their own personal use. I don't agree with that. And before coming with these new laws and regulations, why shouldn't the public have a say in terms of so if they agree or if they want to go to this channel? Because when it was being campaigned, these in the fine print was not mentioned. And that's why now we go to read the fine print, because look what you guys coming with now. That doesn't make any sense. I would understand where you say smoking in public, because it's not everybody could handle those second-hand smoke, especially. Okay, you could be smoking, walking along, and an asthmatic person next to you, and you don't know. Totally understand with that. But when it comes to planting in your personal yard space, I have to apply to plant 5 trees in my yard. But it was in the beginning said that it was okay, you can't pass the 5 trees. No, you guys need to go back to the drawing board and come back. That doesn't make any sense. And I know a lot of people won't agree with it. Imagine paying the government $100, I think I hear you say, to plant trees in my yard. That doesn't make sense.
Thank you for your contribution. I'll just make one thing clear, though. I'm a police officer. I do not make the laws. The laws are made by our parliamentary representatives. We are just the enforcers. I'm just the messenger. Our parliamentary representatives in parliament make the laws. So you and I have the power in terms of casting votes.
Maybe the parliamentary should probably come first with the public, because this was not campaign. When he was being campaign, he did not campaign, so everybody feel like it's right.
No, I can't speak to the campaign.
Everybody planting trees. Females are not a plant tree for their personal use. Everybody planted their own trees. So imagine you going to tell me, and then he's like, I register in for. When I register, you have all access to always check where my goal is, and if I plant more than my 5 trees, to pull them out. No, that ain't make no sense. The government playing smart with people. Just a food for thought.
I understand, and I welcome the thing. What I can say as it pertains to this law, if nothing else, there was a commission and long discussion. There was a committee that went around having discussions prior to the decriminalization of cannabis. To get to this point, this law had, in my opinion, more exposure, more discussion than any, at least most laws in St. Kitts in terms of prior to passing and public involvement of persons having, I think, this one. Because this was a heated discussion from all sides. But what is important nonetheless is, despite the discussions prior, when the laws are passed, it is still important to do some public awareness and public education. And you can consider this part of the public awareness, public education, that while there was discussion and there might have been campaigning and persons said certain things, it's still important to find out what is actually the situation, what is in the laws. And the laws are accessible to us, more so than once ago.
Talking about the laws, the fee or the fees you shared with us, that was for businesses, wasn't it? It was for establishment,
for smoking,
and event, right? So for a single event, it was 100. I'm just trying to seek some clarification here. And for public places who would like to have license to have distribution or smoking, is $200.
Fee payable application with respect to a business, and that is for smoking in designated areas. For having a designated area for smoking. Is person, so an individual, you and somebody working together, it's a partnership, company, or with them people on Central who might want to have an event as a group can apply, but the fee, whether you're a person or company, in respect to that particular business or having the designated area, is $100. If it is a series of events, then the fee is $100. So the application is $100. The payable for application for the businesses for one event, for a series of events, then the fee is less. And it's because then it's $100.
And where the $200 comes in now?
It's the same thing. An application fee shall be made for, he said, set out in the schedule, and he said, the fee payable for application with respect to a business shall be $200. The fee payable application with respect for an event or series of events will be $100. So if you want to keep an event or series of events, it's $100. That's the post.
I'm
if it's
clear
a business, then it's $200.
I'm clear on that. What about regular consumers now who don't have businesses?
That's the $100.
Okay.
And the license are not transferable, so I can apply for the license and pass it on to you.
Okay. We have another call coming in. You can always call back. You know the number. If you don't, it's 662-8674. That's 662-8674. You may continue, Inspector.
Yeah, and the call before, I understand.
I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah. Good morning, Eli.
Good morning. A pleasant morning to each of you in the studio.
Good morning.
I totally agree with that last caller. I don't know if anyone calling after the lady. But I'm going to say something here. Politicians need to be careful with their words and not use their words carelessly in order to get a vote to put them into power. I understand what you're saying about checking the laws because the laws are there. But if my politician, if my representative is going to come to me and is going to tell me from A to Z, I'm going to go along with him because he's supposed to already work out the details inside there to know if there will be consequences or not to persons who will be getting involved with using cannabis. This whole thing about this cannabis story in the House of Assembly had me baffled for days because I could not have understand what they were saying or how they was explaining all the details towards using it, growing it, having it, whatever. Now, down into the years, we are now faced with a whole lot of rules and regulations of prices being attached to too much in your yard, too much on you, and the whole thing. I'm saying this clearly. When politicians want to get in power and sit in the House, in government, in Parliament, when you sit down and you draw up your rules and regulations, make sure that when you're coming to the people, when you're coming to the public, you have your ducks in a row. What you tell people is what people could rely on, what they can believe on. Not that down the road you're going to come with something else, because as the lady said, this is crazy. This is totally crazy. Okay? So politicians moving into the future, when you're looking for votes, and you're going to come to people, and you're going to tell them stories about things that you know they love and they like and they want to get involved with and they want to invest in. Use the words carefully. Don't let people swinging back and forth like a pendulum because this is madness. This what I'm hearing here this morning is madness. And I understand you, sir, that even though politicians says this, we should always abide by the rules. But guess what? The politicians are the ones who are coming to us, and therefore we are the ones who are entrusting in them. So they're supposed to know the rules and regulations and what the consequences will hold, not by saying certain things and then changing them out a couple months or a year down the road. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you, caller. And that's what we're here for. We want to hear what you have to say. And again, he says, we're talking about the license, and the license, but he says, with respect to a business, is valid until the 31st of December in the year in which it was issued. With respect to an event series or series of events, it's valid until the last day of the event or the series of events. The record of the license should be kept. It will be kept by the ministry. The license will have in the person's name, the name of the license, the address of the premises in which the designated smoking area is located, the detailed description of the designated smoking area, And there's a number, it's numbered, a unique number that is for the license. It would have the date of when it was issued and the date it expires. It also says that the Chief Medical Officer, after consultation with the Chief Fire Officer, shall inform any successful applicant of any mandatory fire safety or other public health safety requirements before they issue the license that was applied for. And of course, you can renew the license, and that will be done. It says a license with respect to business is valid for the date it was first issued to the 31st of December of the following year, and is renewable every 2 years by the Chief Medical Officer upon a new application, and the payment fees prescribed before, it's on or before the 15th of January. So it expires the 31st December, but you have to be renewed before January 15th. And I mentioned earlier the license is not transferable. And it can be revoked or suspended if you fail to comply with the terms and conditions. You know, terms and conditions always apply. So if you breach any of the provisions, it can be suspended or revoked altogether. If you plan for one event, you describe what the event should be, but you make some changes that are seriously material to the event, then it can be suspended or revoked since the circumstances change in which it was issued. However, if you feel that like we said, somebody might have done you something wrong in terms of the revocation, you don't feel that it was just, you always have redress. The same applies if you were ticketed or otherwise penalized under the Act, you always have redress. And the courts are always the place for those legal issues. For persons who went to music festival would have remember seeing the signage, and the signage is mandated under the law that you have to display signage designated smoking area, no smoking or vaping depending on the circumstances, except in designated smoking areas. So those are things that we need to keep in mind. And this is always a touchy subject. And I too have to remind myself that it is not what I feel, or what I hear. I have to remember to govern myself according to what is documented in the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis. If I feel that I am being treated unfairly based on the law, then you take it to the court and have the case argued there for the court to make a ruling for or against. And there is a thing that they say in legal terms, ignorantis juris non excusat, that ignorance of the law is no excuse. I can't make a defense and say that I did not know. As long as it's a law in St. Kitts and Nevis documented, I can't say that I did not know. Even if I did not know, it doesn't matter.
Can we take this call?
Sure, we can.
Good morning, your life.
Thank you very much. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
57 years ago, I was presented with a list, something known as dangerous drug. The top of it, the heading, dangerous drug. And cannabis was one.
Yes.
Today, I am so surprised, shocked, and dismantled. So here, legislation passed on cannabis should be used. It is dangerous drug. It is in that category. And to me, it is total madness, and it should not be. The amount of sugar coating that they want to put on it can't work. I must say clearly, it can't work. I shouldn't work. Confusing people, frustrating people is a bad piece of law. I should come off the books. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We welcome all point of views. And regardless of how we feel, remember, we still abide by the laws. If you have an issue, and even persons who feel that this should not be legislation, take it to the court. For persons feel that it hasn't gone far enough, and I've heard the debate that it hasn't gone far enough in terms of Rastafari and giving them sufficient freedom, take it to the court. As a matter of fact, I recall that it was a matter that was put to the court that stimulated the discussion and the decriminalization. The matter was put to the court to say that it cannot be right that Rastafari cannot practice their religion freely, and that the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis under the Drug Act are criminalizing their religious freedom, and the matter was taken to the court. So we are free to take matters to the court that we have particular issues with. But what we do from my end as police is that after the laws are passed, we have a responsibility for enforcement.
Unfortunately, Inspector, we are out of time. But
Yes,
I want to thank the callers for calling and sharing their point of view. I do hope you have a great, or continue to have a great morning.
I will. And it has been a great morning.
Okay, good.
I always welcome our callers. I don't necessarily have to agree with the point of views. I welcome all point of views. There's importance in every point of view. So whether you agree or disagree, we welcome the call. We want to hear what you are thinking. We want to hear your views in terms of how we can do things better. That is why we're here, policing with you. Thank again, GQ, and thanks all of you for calling in and making your contributions.
Tell me what you think about my hop into savings this April with the cable. Join the cable family and get faster, stronger, smarter internet for less. That's 200 megabits per second for only $97. Speed you can count on at a price you love. Seamless streaming.